today Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, recently elected as Pope Leo XIV on May 8, 2025, marks a historic moment as the first American to ascend to the papacy. Born in Chicago in 1955, Prevost's extensive missionary work in Peru and leadership within the Augustinian order have shaped his theological and pastoral perspectives. Pope Leo XIV, formerly Cardinal Robert Prevost, has not publicly detailed his reasons for selecting the name Leo XIV. However, the choice likely reflects a desire to align with the legacy of previous popes named Leo, particularly Pope Leo XIII, who served from 1878 to 1903. Pope Leo XIII was renowned for his intellectual contributions and social teachings, notably the 1891 encyclical Rerum Novarum, which addressed the rights and conditions of laborers and laid the foundation for modern Catholic social doctrine. By adopting the name Leo XIV, the new pope may be signaling a commitment to strong leadership and doctrinal clarity, echoing the values associated with his namesake. Now, the name Leo itself, meaning lion in Latin, has historically been associated with strength and courage. This choice could symbolize Pope Leo XIV's intent to lead the church with fortitude and strength during challenging times. While the exact motivations behind his namesake remain personal, the historical significance of the name Leo and its association with influential papal leadership gives some insight into the possible inspirations for Pope Leo XIV's choice. Now, there are some theological and political inclinations in this pope. Pope Leo XIV is widely regarded as a centrist pope with progressive leanings on social issues. His commitment to marginalized communities, including migrants and the poor, actually aligns very closely with priorities of his predecessor, Pope Francis. However, he maintained traditional stances on certain doctrinal matters, such as opposing the ordination of women as deacons. What are his positions on global issues? Well, let's take a look at climate change. While there is no direct record of Pope Leo XIV's statements on climate change, his alignment with Pope Francis suggests a continuity in emphasizing environmental stewardship. Pope Francis's encyclical, the Laudato Si, highlighted the moral imperative of addressing climate issues, and this was a perspective that will likely be shared by his successor. What about one world religion? Well, again, there is no evidence to suggest that Pope Leo XIV advocates for a singular global religion. In fact, the Catholic Church continues to promote interfaith dialogue while upholding its distinct theological identity. When it comes to the world economy, specific economic policies under Pope Leo XIV have not been detailed. However, his pastoral focus on the poor indicates a probable continuation of the Church's advocacy for economic justice and addressing systemic inequalities. What's interesting is the issue of Sabbath keeping. Pope Leo XIV actually takes a traditional Catholic teaching stance by observing Sunday as the Lord's Day, and he emphasizes that it is spiritually significant without imposing any additional measures. In terms of the U.S. government, despite his American origins, Pope Leo XIV's extensive service in Peru and the Vatican suggests a global outlook. Historically, the election of an American pope was considered highly unlikely due to concerns about U.S. geopolitical influence. So his election as pope may reflect a shift in this perception. What are the prophetic implications? Well, the election of an American pope has been a subject of speculation in various religious and prophetic interpretations. However, the Catholic Church does not officially endorse such prophetic frameworks. In fact, Pope Leo XIV's leadership is actually expected to continue the church's mission without aligning with any speculative prophetic narratives. The election of an American pope, Pope Leo XIV, again, formerly Cardinal Robert Prevost, a U.S. cardinal, is indeed highly unusual, and this may carry symbolic or prophetic significance, particularly when viewed through the lens of biblical prophecy, especially those found in Revelation chapter 13. And you take a look at that through the traditional historicist eschatology. So let's take a look at a breakdown of some potential prophetic implications and any possible ties to President Trump and Vice President Vance. Let's take a look first at the U.S. Pope as a prophetic tie to Revelation 13. In the biblical historicist understanding of prophecy, Revelation chapter 13 speaks of two beasts. The first is found in verse 1 through 10, and this is traditionally interpreted as papal Rome. The second beast, found in verses 11 through 18, is interpreted as the United States of America, which rises like a lamb but speaks like a dragon. We're going to circle back on that in just a minute. Now, the election of an American pope symbolically blurs the line between these two prophetic powers. Why does this matter? You see, it potentially unites the two beasts into a single individual, a pope from the US, which may foreshadow the political and religious union prophesied in the enforcement of false worship and a global system under the mark of the beast. You see, it normalizes the US Vatican cooperation at the highest symbolic level, possibly setting the stage for religious laws like Sunday observance. And this could possibly be influenced by both religious and political power that are now working in tandem. Number two, now we know for a fact that there are no known ties to Trump or Vance. However, Pope Leo XIV is interestingly from the United States. And rather than looking at the Pope, let's take a look at Vice President Vance. Vance has criticized U.S. Catholic bishops in the past, suggesting ideological tension with progressive Catholic leadership. Now, you take that and you flip side it to Trump. Trump era policies, especially on nationalism, immigration, and religious liberty, is sparking deep debate in the Catholic Church. And a U.S. Pope could potentially bridge that divide by leveraging dual identities: American pragmatism plus global religious leadership. Thirdly, there is a potential ramification for prophecy. Here's what could unfold if prophetic patterns continue aligning up. Sunday laws and climate policy could be impacted. If Pope Leo XIV aligns with the Laudato Si and global environmental agreements, as his predecessor did, and the U.S. leadership under Trump and Vance begins to echo calls for a common day of rest or moral renewal, this could lead towards global Sunday observance, a key element in prophetic understandings about the mark of the beast in Revelation chapter 13. There's also some hints of one world religion narratives. While Leo XIV is not known to advocate a one world religion, his expected continuation of interfaith dialogue, ecological unity, and global moral leadership fits the model of a spiritual unifier, one who could bring many faiths together under a common cause. When you take a look at that and compare it to US religious legislation, with increasing Christian nationalism and dominant ideology in US politics, a shared language of moral values, family, and creation care would align with Vatican priorities with US legislative momentum, possibly leading to religious coercion. So let's look at some what-if scenarios. If American Pope could serve as the symbolic and practical bridge between the first and second beasts of Revelation 13, this would be huge. If Trump and Vance align with religious leadership, especially with shared values like Sunday observance, anti-secularism, or ecological Sabbath keeping, then this could accelerate prophetic developments, including an enforced Sunday law, restriction of religious liberty, economic penalties for dissenters, Are we seeing that today? Here's the question. Has Trump and Vance, have they shown any indicators that this alignment could actually occur? Well, interestingly, the Trump-Vance administration has demonstrated a growing alignment with religious leadership, particularly through emphasis on religious liberty and engagement with Christian nationalist movements. Now, while there is no explicit advocacy for enforced Sunday laws or economic penalties for dissenters, there are several indicators that are suggesting a trajectory that could raise concerns among those attentive to prophetic interpretations of Revelation 13. Let's take a look at them. Number one, an emphasis on religious liberty. Vice President J.D. Vance has publicly stated that the administration aims to vigorously defend and expand religious freedom. In a speech at the International Religious Freedom Summit, Vance emphasized that individuals should not have to leave faith at the door of people's government. And he was actually highlighting the US administration's commitment to integrating faith into public life. Number two, engagement with Christian nationalist movements. Now, the US administration's connection to Christian nationalism is evident through participation in events that are organized by figures like Lance Wallnau. He is a proponent of the Seven Mountain Mandate, which advocates for Christian influence over key societal sectors. Vance's involvement in such events actually underscores the administration's alignment with movements that seek to intertwine religious and government authorities. Number three, an influence of post-liberal Catholic thought. So Vance's ideological leanings are influenced by post-liberal Catholic thinkers who advocate for a governance model where the state is subordinate to spiritual authority. Wow. This perspective challenges traditional liberal democratic principles and suggests a preference for a moral order that is guided by religious doctrine. Number four, tensions with broader religious institutions. The administration has experienced friction with established religious bodies, particularly over issues like immigration. Vance has criticized Catholic bishops for their stance on immigration policies, questioning their motivations and highlighting a divergence between the administration's policies and the broader religious community's teachings. Number five, there are some potential implications for prophetic interpretations. While there is no direct evidence of plans to enforce Sunday laws or impose economic penalties for dissenters, the administration's actions and affiliations are suggesting a trend towards integrating specific religious values into national policy. For those interpreting current events through the lens of Revelation 13, such developments could be seen as steps toward the prophecies of union of religious and political power that mandates a particular form of worship, as we see in Revelation 13. So when you pull all of this together, we begin to see a picture begin to form. The Trump-Vance administration's alignment with certain religious ideologies and movements indicate a shift towards policies that intertwine faith and governance. While not explicitly advocating for measures like enforced Sunday observance, the administration's trajectory may raise concerns for those who are attentive to prophetic warnings about the union of church and state authority. So here's a question. Is there any concern for a Vatican and US union now that an American is Pope? Well, the answer to that is yes. Significant prophetic and geopolitical concerns are arising from this unprecedented election of an American Pope when you view it through the lens of Revelation 13 and you look at it through a biblical historicist eschatology. This could mark a symbolic, a potentially literal step toward the prophesied union of church and state, particularly between the Vatican and the United States. And here is why this matters. Again, circling back to how we started this, Revelation chapter 13, you look at the formation of two beasts, the rise of two beasts. The first beast found in Revelation 13, verse 1 through 10, interpreted by almost all Protestant Christians as papal Rome, with a long history of persecuting dissenters and demanding religious authority. But there's a second beast, Revelation 13:11 through 18, interpreted as the United States, which begins like a lamb with Christian values, but speaks like a dragon, coercive authority. Do we see that happening right now? So we see a prophetic trajectory. Revelation says that the second beast, USA, will cause the world to worship the first beast, the papacy, enforce a universal mark, a false worship, and impose economic sanctions on those who dissent. We find that in verse 17. So this American Pope is equal to a symbolic merger. The election of an American Pope begins to do something interesting. It is blurring the distinction between the two prophetic entities. It symbolizes the global moral authority of Rome, but now being wrapped up in an American identity. This could ease diplomatic, political, and ideological alliances between the US government and the Vatican. And this is the first time in history where Revelation 13's two beasts may now be embodied into a single symbolic figure, potentially paving the way for unified religious political action. President Trump and Vice President Vance have an agenda. How is that related to the Vatican? Well, Trump and Vance advocate strong national religious identity, anti-secularism, and moral revival. These are themes that are also being echoed by the Catholic Church's call for spiritual renewal and climate Sabbath under the Laudato Si. So if the US leadership and the Vatican begin to publicly agree on these moral imperatives, for example, Sunday rest, family values, religious unity, these are all prophetic red flags. The global influence of a US Pope could serve to legitimize or popularize religious laws in American culture and American policy. And this is a key step to enforce worship systems as outlined in Revelation 13. Way back in the early 19th century, there was a book that came out called The Great Controversy. On page 588, the writer says that the US will begin to undermine its own constitution and will make provisions for the propagation of papal falsehoods and delusions. Now, this scenario now seems more plausible given the current administration and the election of an American Pope. Now, is it time to be alarmed? Yes, symbolically. This is a major prophetic milestone that aligns with historicist biblical interpretation. But on the flip side of that, no, practically, there is no immediate Sunday law or forced worship yet. But the infrastructure, political alignment, religious unity, ideological fusion is forming. So we need to watch closely, pray earnestly, and begin to build that relationship with God, because we believe that the prophecies of Revelation 13 are beginning to unfold right before our eyes.